How are you doing out there, Cincinnati soccer talking good guys? I am back from vacation, and Brian has been released to do whatever twin redheads do when they are no one's looking. But shout out for his hosting duties the past couple weeks. Sometimes I need to run away from real life and shrug off responsibility, and I guess so do soccer clubs. You know, clinching at home was just too easy. Not when there are more podcasts coming down the pike. FC Cincinnati didn't want those easy 3 points. They wanted to give us one last show of will. The club can't help bring the tease, kind of like your high school crush. So, well, to our nation's capital we go to find out if the Midwest has what it takes. The club that held the spoon versus the club that is now the spoon. Win, and we are in. For Cincinnati, for freedom. For all of those that believe in good things in this world and that years of hard work can overcome sadness, that piles of season ticket cash spent in vain can pile up for good rewards. At the end of the day, capitalism will come through. Cincinnati will come through. Your hopes and dreams will come through. The music really needs to hit a peak so I can move on. All right, there we go. Let's bring in our co-host for the evening because I am out. Epic intros. Thanks for tuning in to Cincinnati Soccer Talk tonight. We have a good one for you, and hopefully another banger next week. First up, let's bring in Jason Ashcroft. It's been a while since we have chatted. What's going on, my man?
Helps if I unmute my mic. What is going on? I am still mad. I have never been, I'll take that back. This was the second angriest I've been all season after Saturday. And someone asked me this morning at work, how was the FC Cincinnati game this weekend? And it just ruined my day again. I am still feeling bad.
Sorry to hear that. Well, hey, it is so bad you sold all the frogs. For those of you that listen to the podcast, Jason every week has this aquarium in his background. I think we've talked about it before. All of a sudden today, we come in here and boom, aquarium gone, animals gone. Did you just unleash them into the wild? Cincinnati has a lizard problem. Is you adding to it?
Yeah, they're going to be friends with the Lazarus lizards, and we're really going to mess up the ecosystem with another invasive species.
All right, well, we appreciate you invading Cincinnati. All right, Nate's here to try to diagnose this club for us. He's our resident DC expert, currently resides in DC. Everybody's looking to you, Nate, to figure out, is this our week, man?
Yeah, I hope so. I'll get to see this in person for a change, and wouldn't you know it, it's one of the big, the biggest game in the history of the club, arguably. Big week ahead.
So was my intro too loud? Is that what you were telling me earlier? We'll see how that comes through on the audio. It might be terrible. I took a risk there. Ken, stats man himself. Ken, I got a story for you. I was on vacation the past couple weeks. I met a Canadian couple, this guy that swore he was a great sports gambler. And I said, boy, do I have the tips for you. My good friend Ken has this predictive modeling for MLS soccer. It comes out pretty good most of the time. I said, he's got FC Cincinnati and Philadelphia Union this week. You should put money on it. Guy throws $200 down, and then he texts me this weekend. He's like, what the hell?
Hey, just like your frogs, I should be gone.
What happened to everybody? Like all of the predictive MLS modeling went out the window this week.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's why you play the game, right? That's what they say. So can't get them all right. And I'll say this: the betting models have Vegas has become smarter as the season goes on. That's usually how it occurs. So the good bets are earlier in the season, and they start to wane towards the end. But yeah. Good to be back. I couldn't escape like Jason's frogs.
Well, we had an interesting one. Before we get into it, though, we want to give a big shout out. You may see a new logo in the top right hand of the corner. And don't worry, SwearWX is still here with us. In fact, we have just segmented the show out a little bit better. But we want to give a shout out to Cincinnati Soccer Talk's newest sponsor, Apollo Home, one of Cincinnati's largest and most trusted home service providers. But don't take my word for it. Check out the Google reviews. For all of your home heating, cooling, electric, and plumbing needs, reach out to Apollo. Visit apollohome.com to book a service online or give them a call to speak with one of their awesome customer service team members. Let them know you're a CST listener. And this is where you might be like, hey, Boston, why should I care? I'm just here for the awesome soccer content. Well, they are going to start waiving on-site technician fees for CST listeners. If you mention that you listen to the show, that $79 you would pay for them to come to your house is gone. Poof! Into thin air. So big shout out for Apollo for supporting our soccer content and also giving our listeners a deal. So if that applies to you, check it out. They do great stuff. Now, on to not so great stuff. Best and worst 3-2 loss to Chicago. A 1-1 draw versus Seattle. 2 games this week you guys can pick from. Best and worst. Jason, you're up first.
Oh man. Best. That's kind of hard to pick, to be honest. I guess I'll say the fact that we played one of our worst games of the year at Seattle and came away with a point, which is very hard to do. That's great. And that we're still in the hunt. We're not completely out of it. The worst, again, it's hard to pick just one. I think for me, it was just the entire team on Saturday felt off. I don't know if it was the pressure getting to them. I don't know if it was, them kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and choking. Everybody seemed off. Roman had a bad game. Lucho had a bad game. Brenner didn't have the best game in the world. Everybody was missing something. And you can't do that in high pressure situations if you want to be a championship level team. So to me, I guess that was the worst. We'll get into more of it, I'm sure. But like I said, I was just so disappointed leaving TQL Stadium on Saturday because of all that.
Well, at least you got to go, my man. If you can't hear it in my voice, I came down with a bit of a cold, and I thought the people in front of me would appreciate if it wasn't hacking all over their backside. So I sat this one out, although it pained me. Missing the last game of the season is a painful thing to do when you have tickets and you could go. And I seriously thought about jeopardizing the lives around me, but I just kidding. It wasn't really an option. But all right, best and worst, Ken.
Well, first, a true fan would have gone and not cared about the people around them. It's the last game of the year. But anyways, the best, I actually thought, and it's hard for me to tell because I was sitting in the Bailey this Saturday, but it was
Me too.
the best energy I felt in that stadium all year. And usually I can feel it from when I'm sitting at the midfield seats or whatever that we're at right behind Boston. And but I wasn't there, but it sure the heck felt like it in the stands. I mean, the Bailey was filled up, and I say filled up, it was pretty daggone full 15, 20 minutes before the game. So the energy was high. So I was super impressed with TQL Stadium and what the fans brought. So outside of that, the worst was the game. And I mean, it's hard to kind of just even, I think Jason said it's hard to pick the worst, but it's like the game was the worst. That was just laying the biggest egg of the year at home. That was this game. And that was the disappointment. I mean, if that was game 1, I could have understood, but this is game 17 of the homestand. And to finish out the year like that was a disappointment. So I'll just leave it at that.
Fair enough. All right. That leaves you, Nate. Best and worst.
Yeah. So I'll start with the worst. And the top line isn't much different than what's already been mentioned. But I, have a bit of a different take on it. I would say it's the worst because it was just one of those games where I thought FC Cincinnati actually played pretty well in the first half. They created a lot of chances. They had their opportunities. It's just, it was one of those games where they couldn't finish one off, and coming out and pushing aggressively for that opener, left him open on the counter, and then left him open again, and then again, which sucks. To have one of those games where you're really in control and you just, whatever you do, you can't get across the line, and then to lose like that. It sucks that it happened in, one of the biggest games of the year. But my best is that this doesn't mean that it's over. And it all comes down to this weekend, which is kind of a wild thing to think about where we were before the season kicked off in Austin. I think everybody would have taken that opportunity. And I know expectations have changed as we've gotten throughout the season. But we're going to have an opportunity to watch just like a really stressful, terrifying sporting event. It's going to be a painful, I assume it will be a painful 2 hours. And it'll be stressful and anxiety inducing. And I'm super excited. I can't wait. I've been waiting so long to watch, meaningful games from this team. And, this is outside of a playoff run, hard to imagine something more important than this game. So that's my best, just the lead up to this week. And then when we finally hit kickoff on Sunday.
So we can agree they threw for content, right? FC Cincinnati didn't want the last game to go to waste. They didn't want that DC match just hanging out there for no reason.
Yeah, tip your cap to the writers' room.
Right? They know all these fans are going to travel to DC and need to see a match. You're in DC. It was the one you had circled on your calendar as this is the big one I'm going to go to. FC Cincinnati's just looking out for us all, guys. Oh, man. The best, though, for me is the suspense. As a podcast writer, you can't script this any better. Comes down to the final game. You thought FC Cincinnati would win versus Chicago, win versus DC, and make it in the playoffs. But no, they won versus RSL. They tied Seattle. They made it look better than it was just so they could drop that Chicago game. You got to love the suspense, although if we're sitting here a week from today with frowns on our faces, we're all going to regret that suspense very, very much. So you never know what will happen. That's the beauty of it. But hey, end of the day, you guys are right. We are here. We're in it. Win and we're in. Not only that, we control our own destiny. So that's pretty cool. To have back-to-back weeks of just winning in. Are you guys gonna miss? Let's see if I can get that. You guys gonna miss this? No more of the intro song. So I was on Ken's point about the stadium excitement. It was definitely hype. You could see it coming through the TV. I unfortunately couldn't be there, but I felt it. You guys sounded great. You looked great. The Bailey was rocking. I think that's what the club has always wanted, is an early Bailey, not just a Bailey that kind of fills in. They want that one that's like when the players are warming up, they see how full, they see the excitement. So I think if that could transition into next year, that would be pretty freaking awesome. Mm-hmm. Jay Yates saying best, not being mathematically eliminated. I guess worst. I know I'm in the minority, and the team did play badly, but another match adversely affected by horrendous officiating is getting old. The third goal looked 100% offsides from our seats. But wasn't that the one where he kind of like chipped Celentano?
Yeah.
It was pretty close. It looked off, but I mean,
and I don't think there was ever a very good replay of it either. So
yeah, I didn't see a good replay, and
I didn't even think to look for it because it was such a chip. It was a chip shot from way out.
Because we were down 2-0, and by the time the third one goes in, you're sort of like, oh well,
might as well.
Yeah,
and to Jay's point, though, I don't want to like keep on the old chestnut of pro referees versus FC Cincinnati, but this referee did not have control of the match the entire time. Like there was that one player for Chicago, the winger, I can't remember his name. I think he's like
Muller?
a stand-in. Yeah. Who like swiped at him at one point in the first half and then got in his face and did not get ejected or even get a card. Like that was, he set the bar pretty low from the beginning and just did not have control of the entire match.
Yeah, I thought it was odd the way the cards came out. I did notice that it was very strange that Chicago racked up so many fouls, and yet FCC only had 4, but they had the first yellow.
Yeah,
that was the kind of the strange thing to me. It was like Chicago ruined all the goodwill, so we got the first yellow. Seattle, though, before we dive into what everybody really wants to talk about, which is that Chicago game. Any surprises from you guys on Seattle? 1-1 draw. I think before the season, you would take that in a heartbeat, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and even before that week, you can say everything that like Seattle, obviously missed the playoffs for the first time in whoever knows how many years. Only for the Mariners to make it with 3 Cincinnati Reds, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, going into that stadium, flying across country, playing on turf, playing in a football stadium, and then really playing against a team playing for their lives, their season. That second half was like, I'm sure, Talking Tactics did a great breakdown of it, or however much you could, but Seattle was throwing everything at the wall. So not being able to, take advantage of that red card and kind of dominate the game from there was not surprising to me, just because Seattle is going to be flying around and, I don't even know what formation they ended in, but it seemed like they had 6 strikers on the field and they were down to 10 men. So, it was not a normal game. And, getting a point, regardless of the fact that, Seattle didn't make the playoffs is probably a good point.
So I just want to add to that. Noonan, I thought, summed it up pretty well at the end of the Seattle game. And I think it carried over into this Chicago game, which I know is a little more of a hot take for me. But I feel like, well, specifically the Seattle game, but both games, the midfield didn't control the tempo of the game well enough to take advantage of the opposing team. Maybe not Chicago so much as that, but I mean, there were moments in time where I felt like our midfield, it's great to attack. We all love the attack, and that's how we operate. But sometimes 2-on-5 is not the right call to go at it and try and do something. So, but specifically the Seattle game, sometimes you have to just slow the ball down and let your players grow into the game, come up, give your defense rest. And I don't think we do that well at points in time during multiple games, including the Chicago game, even, because I think Chicago out Cincinnati'd us. They sat back and absorbed and countered, and we got tense and we pressed high. I mean, that's the high. I don't know if that's the highest line I've seen our back line play, but that was pretty daggone high for having a Jeff Cameron at center back and Hags, and they just went over the top of us on 2 goals basically. Yeah. So that's my one takeaway from it.
My takeaway from Seattle is Roman Celentano had one of his better games of the year. Big saves.
Let's say so.
But also, I think somebody in the comments, Jay Yates, said something about learning to smell blood in the water. I mean, when you're up a man on the road, yeah, it's great to get a point on the road in Seattle, but we played 20 minutes up a man and couldn't put the ball in the net. So that's something that needs to be improved on as well. You have got to be able to take advantage of that situation and get another point, because we win at Seattle, we may not be having this kind of freak out we're having today.
Brenner scores early, right? 20 something minute. And I felt like at that moment that Cincinnati just doesn't. We've won 1-0 game. It's not our method. We have to. I told the people next to me, we have to score a second goal, or we will draw or lose this game. One's not enough, unfortunately. Hasn't been most of the year, and that second goal didn't come. Seattle got that red card in the second half. They got a goal in the second half before the red card. FC Cincinnati failing to close that one out. End of the day, though, I was still happy with the point. I mean,
Yeah.
it is going to the West Coast and winning any games, let alone beating RSL and tying Seattle. 4 points on that road trip, man. I mean, that set us up for this Chicago DC run.
Right.
All we had to do was beat a couple iffy, crappy teams, right? Easy as pie. That's a setup for the Chicago experiment. Who had Chicago going up 3-0?
Not
Ken,
I.
surprised?
I had it. I had them 3-0 for sure. No, just by using the Growler Cup, and I'm going to say this: nobody got the Chicago score correct. Not that's a surprise, but only a few people even got a point from that game. So everybody was on the bandwagon of FCC winning, and nobody got it right. So I mean, it was a shocker.
It wasn't like FCC looked bad. That first half, we were
No.
knocking on the door. Nate
summed it up great. He said we played well. I mean, we played well enough. When I was saying I'm disappointed in the midfield, we still played better than Chicago in my opinion. As the game as a whole, it's just controlling moments of time that we lack. I don't know if discipline's the right word or good decision making skills, and we get punished by it. We don't have all the best, we don't have the greatest players across the board, so we're a little bit easier to expose, I think, at points in time. So
I think I saw somewhere, Nate, that like Acosta's XG in the first half was over a goal.
Yeah, it might be. I've not spent a lot of time looking back on that. It's still a little too raw, I think. Maybe tomorrow morning I'll face up to it. But I just wanted to, say that I think I saw maybe it was internally here at CST or whatever, when the lineups dropped, that everybody was like, oh, Shaqiri's, on national team duty and Przbilko's not playing. John Duran's really good. And I don't think they're, maybe his agent's doing a great job coming off of a brace on the road. But like he is in demand in Europe, apparently, and could be on the move for, millions of dollars. So he is like a legit prospect. And, it's too bad that he scored a brace, but I think everybody, whether you were there watching on TV or watching in person or watching on TV, you can see his quality. He's 18 and he's out physicaling a lot of our center backs and defenders and midfielders. Played really well in the first half. Did FCC, but you got to tip your cap to the opponent at some point, especially one who's that good.
Yeah, they played spoiler, and we have another team that wants to play spoiler again. Hopefully we learned our lesson a week early, though, right? I do have some, I guess, silver linings, if you want to pull them out of this match. Vasquez had not scored in about a month, and he finally ends up on the score sheet here in this one in the comeback against Chicago that didn't quite finish all the way. How important do you think it is for his confidence, Vasquez, going into DC and then maybe even possibly the playoffs?
I think it's really important. I mean, anytime you have a striker who's on a kind of a scoreless streak, to get them off the schneid is great. I mean, we saw it earlier this year with Brenner. Actually saw it a couple times with Brenner where he would, kind of go quiet and cold and then break out and have a few good games. So if we can get all three of the attacking players rolling heading into DC and hopefully heading in a playoff, you like where FC Cincinnati's headed. I mean, I think it was on Extra Time they were mentioning how they would not want to face FC Cincinnati in the playoff. Well, if we're playing well, yeah, that's absolutely true. And Brandon Vasquez is one of those people that you really need to get going.
Hey, if I want to give a shout out to somebody for Brandon Vasquez, I think there was, and I say shout out, there's like 6 supporters who spelled out pancakes in the element symbols like PA, whatever. And so I think that's why Brandon scored, was because we have those fans, so they need to go watch the away game together, so with those shirts on, so he can score another goal.
I saw a picture on Twitter. Yeah, that was awesome. Shout out to creative fans. It's always cool. Santos. We got to talk about Santos and his red card and that whole experiment. He had a rough couple games. He had Seattle with the blue hair trying to knock in a game winner, failing to get it through. A couple pretty decent chances, and then what could have been a game-tying point. Santos, man, just not his week, I think, overall, getting the red card, suspended in the DC game. But do you see him back in an FC Cincinnati uniform?
Not at 900,000.
Because he was on basically a tryout, right, for the rest of the year?
Well, I mean, we're picking up his the rest of his salary, and we paid a transfer fee, technically, in GAM to Philadelphia. But at and people don't roast me for this, but he's kind of like Brandon Vasquez of last year, where he gets in good spots. So I like him for that, but you can't get in good spots and not finish when you are making the amount of money he's making. There's a difference of Brandon Vasquez making $200,000 to $300,000 and finding spots and being 22 years old and not finishing, compared to Santos making $900K, and I think he's 27 or something like that, 26, 27 maybe. I'm taking a guess there, and not finishing. So it's not this apples to apples when you take that into consideration. So your question was, does he come back? I don't see how he does at that dollar rate.
Yeah, he was brought in as kind of this is the backup. This is the guy off the bench. The FC Cincinnati spent a decent chunk of change on making sure he was here as the depth for that position. And I feel bad because I don't know if it's been the most successful experiment for Albright and Noonan.
I think it's been fine. Like, he's gotten a lot of minutes. He has certainly not, the final product hasn't been there. But he drew that red card against NYCFC. He draw the red card against Seattle too?
I believe he did.
So I mean, he gives you another option, and it's tough because he's playing like 30 minutes a game, and he really hasn't been here too long. He was hurt for a while, but he is getting in the right spots, which is one of the most important things a striker can do. He might not be a world-class finisher, but to what extent that actually exists, I might need to be convinced. So I don't know. I think there are still so many moving pieces with this roster for next year, and there's going to be so much turnover. I wouldn't rule it out. Like, I would not. I wouldn't put money on Santos not being on the team next year, just because if they're going to play with two strikers, you need a good third striker. And I don't know where else that comes from on the bench. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how this off season comes together. But thankfully, we don't have to be talking about that quite yet.
Nate, the voice of reason, but yeah, I guess don't write anybody off. I wrote Brandon Vasquez off, believe it or not. If you go back and listen to years old podcasts, you will hear me say that he is washed up and not any good. And that's because he was only getting those end of game minutes, and he really needed that starting time.
Who was the original Stan Brandon Vasquez?
Yeah, we were rough. We were rough on old Brandon, but I will say it was very similar to Santos. He was getting that thrown in the last 20 minutes of a match, and that wasn't enough time for Brandon to get running. And so we've seen kind of what it looks like now, where a system that's set up for him to be successful. And so I guess because if we're going to learn our lesson, Ken, we're not going to write Santos off too early, even though I just tried to do so.
Hey, I've been wrong on people too, so I'm just gonna take credit for the ones I got right.
Well, the back half of our show is sponsored by Suero X. Our good old friends at Suero X have been over a year sponsoring this podcast and show, and we want to give them a shout out. You could find their products if you're an Amazon Prime shopper, of course, over there. But now locally, you can also start to find them in stores. Jungle Gyms, I know, breaking into Kroger as well. So they have great flavors like coconut grape, lemon lime, zero sugar, 0 calories, pretty healthy. It is a win-win, especially if you are running around soccer matches with your kids. And so it's a great hydration method. Check it out. We actually have had listeners of the show buy it. And so far, everybody sent us great reviews. So if you do try it, let us know. We want to know. We want to know that we are indeed shouting out a good product. So you might be like, hey, CST, 2 sponsors. You guys got live shows. What's going on? And that's exactly what we are trying to do. We are trying to bring bigger and better events for you guys to participate. We heard you really enjoyed meeting Matt Miazga and Roman Celentano at Sam Adams, and that was a pretty cool live show. So you know what we've done? We have gone ahead and rolled out our next live show. This one, a little bit different because it's in November. There's no FC Cincinnati matches in November. But there is this thing, kind of World Cup-y. The United States men's national team will be playing, and American Outlaws Cincinnati has invited us to come host and talk about it. And luckily, there are people on this staff that are more educated about the United States men's national team than I. So they will be taking the lead on this, but I will be there. I will be excited to watch. I think there are all kinds of surprises planned that we are not quite going to announce. But go ahead and mark November 21st on your calendar at Grainworks Brewery. That's where it's going to be, a little bit north for you suburbites that couldn't make it all the way downtown. This one was a good one for you to attend. It'll be a little bit more north of the city. Go ahead and write it down. You can also get in touch with us, Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Email us feedback at cincinnati-soccertalk.com. We love hearing from you. Occasionally, we go ahead and publish or use some of those ideas in articles. So thanks so much to those of you that have written in as well. All right, guys. I'm trying to...
Really compelling podcast we got going on. Right
I know,
now.
technical difficulties.
This is how the magic gets made.
Trying to adjust the old rundown here. All right. Let's go into the playoff race, because we would be remiss if we did not dive into the current playoff picture. Jason, you told me before the show you had all the scenarios up. So I know this much. I know if we win, we're in.
Yeah.
If we draw, heaven forbid we draw, are we still okay? Or is it a big if?
Okay. So if we draw, it's still a big if. Hats off to playoffstatus.com /MLS/FC Cincinnati clinch.html if you want to look at
they had to get that URL up and running this year for the first
time. Yeah, so the easiest way that we clinch, and we are guaranteed spot number 7 if we win, if we beat DC United. If the Crew tie Charlotte and Crew lose to Orlando, we're in at number 7. If FC Cincinnati ties DC United and the Crew ties Charlotte and the Crew tie Orlando, we're also in. There's at least, just for spot 7, there's 24 different cases that they've laid out.
Holy moly.
Yeah, there's, just a quick check, about 50 cases of how we can make the playoffs.
Just roll through them all so we can fall asleep.
Oh my gosh, no.
The rest of the show.
If our best hope, if we're wanting the five seed, which is the best we can possibly do, here is the most straightforward case. All right, for this again for the 5th seed. FC Cincinnati beats DC United, and the Crew do not beat Charlotte, so a loss or a tie.
That sounds beautiful.
And Inter Miami lose to Orlando City.
Okay.
And then Orlando City loses to the Crew. So that gets you spot 5.
Yeah,
so
but the crew won a game in that. That hurts my heart.
Yeah. So I think the best thing for FC Cincinnati fans to remember is if we beat DC United, we're in at least the number 7 spot.
Yeah, let's just sum it up there. Dan Albert says if we don't win, we don't deserve to be in. That's a fiery take because Dan, I don't believe you though. If we draw and we still get in, your butt is going to be cheering secretly now. But I think you're going to be at. I'll take anything, but I want to win. I want to win for sure.
I'm closer to Dan. I say closer. I agree with Dan basically. If we don't win against Chicago and DC, I'm not saying we don't deserve it, but we sure the heck did. We backed in if we got in. So does that happen? Sure, but you want to earn it and show that you deserve to be there. So I'd rather obviously any of us would rather us win and go in, but you definitely don't want to back in with 2 losses.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, and I could very well be wrong. When Portland made it to MLS Cup final against Atlanta,
they were the 7th seed.
Yeah, didn't they just sneak in by the skin of their teeth on the very last day? So
you're saying there's a chance?
I'm saying so long as we're in is all I care about.
Yeah.
Dude, playoffs are that way, though. You can be the best team in the league. You can be a LAFC or a Philadelphia Union. You saw what happened to Philadelphia last week. They just got curb stomped for no reason. That's Philadelphia's let fewer goals in than any team in the league by a massive margin, and yet they just got owned. And that all that happens in the playoff game. Anything can happen. One of those, and you're done.
And if Philly lose this weekend, and Montreal wins, they won't be the number 1 seed.
Yeah, what's wild.
I mean, that is crazy.
For selfishly, are we allowed to be selfish? Because I want FC Cincinnati
Absolutely.
to win, so they're in the playoffs. But I kind of would love to play an opponent that's easier to get to. Montreal's the only one I don't want because I don't want. I just flying up there is going to be a pain, and a lot of our fans are going to want to go to the first playoff game.
Yeah, but I love Montreal.
Greatest city on the East Coast out of all of them.
I mean, where would you rather be? Like the middle of or like northern New Jersey or Montreal? I don't think that's a question.
Columbus is exciting.
If money is no option, sure, but New York is a heck of a lot cheaper to get to.
Not according to Google Flights that I was looking at today.
Cheaper to stay in Montreal, I can tell you that, compared to New York.
Yeah, if you stay in New Jersey, that's the secret right there. Oh, man. All right, so basically what you're telling us, Jason, is that there's 500,000 scenarios, and we just need to win. If we don't win, though,
I think
everybody's going to go running to those tables and trying to figure out what.
There's so many midweek permutations here with the Tuesday and Wednesday games.
Yeah.
That was a great segment. You guys did a fantastic job trying to summarize that. I was not paying attention because I'm going to care about this on Thursday morning when everything gets a little bit simpler.
That's fair enough. We published the table on Twitter, kind of one of those, if this happens, this will happen. And I think one of the most liked comments was, I have no idea what's happening. That's fair enough, because it isn't easy. It's not easy yet. But as these games are played one by one, I think all the dominoes are going to, start to align. And, the first one of these games that takes place will probably wipe 20 of those possibilities right off the board. And so on. So I wanted to kind of touch on a bunch of lasts because this was the final home game of the season. I know fans really wanted to see a better ending to the TQL season, but that is what it is. There still is a lot of interesting. This is different, right? FC Cincinnati finally played a good season that you can be proud of. The wooden spoon is no more. I think, Ken, did I see a picture of you with the trophy?
Yeah, I finally got a picture of it. Ryan Lammy brought it up to me, and I said, I need a picture with that because I'll never see it again.
I'm blaming whoever brought it to the stadium. I'm blaming our loss on that.
Hey, could be just a cursed object, but either way, it's gone for good. I think one of the fans going to DC. We'll probably take it down there to Screaming Eagles or whatever, and whatever their supporter groups are called down there. And it's gone. It's not ours. But so the Anthony Precourt Wooden Spoon Trophy is officially out of our hands after 3 freaking years.
Back in its traditional home of the District of Columbia.
Yeah, fair enough. Tommy and Kevin, done at TQL Stadium unless they do that last DC broadcast from there. But really the whole crew, with all the trucks and all the technical equipment. I will give them a shout out. I know that some people are really looking forward to the Apple deal for all of the kind of streamlining that it will bring, and I'm with you when it comes to that part of the deal. However, don't forget our roots. FC Cincinnati in USL had probably the best broadcast of a minor league. And if you think about it, we started in USL when it was still D3.
Oh, no doubt.
And it was just, it blew away anything else being offered by that league. There were still clubs back in USL D3 that had one camera, and it was just a guy that would like swivel it back and forth. And we would go from what we kind of see today. It hasn't changed much. It's the same production. Then we would watch an away game where there's a guy holding the camera, swinging it back and forth. And I remember we would just crap all over like the USL. We were just like, what is this garbage production? Look at what we have. And that was with Nippert sight lines in a football stadium. But man, just Tommy brought better quality television when we were just a dream, hoping to be a Major League Soccer team. And I think all of that being caught on the US Open Cup and having all that production quality in place is a part of the story. Is it the reason we won an MLS bid? No, I'm not going crazy saying stuff like that, but it is a big piece of it. And having all those old school Mitch Says No trailers and stadium board, it brings back the memories. So do want to give a thanks because it's a part of the history. And I think that it is an end of an era. Seeing our home school TV production. The days of turning on Star 64 are also over.
Or YouTube back in the USL days.
Yeah.
At least for me out of market. That's what I was doing.
So
which I really
too
appreciate
for a while. Yeah.
ESPN Plus, gone. Everything you've grown accustomed to, kind of in a way, is out the door. And we're going to, for better or worse, this Apple TV deal could be the future. It could be the coolest thing ever. It also could go through some stumbling blocks, and we're going to wonder why we changed it. Stay tuned. Next season, that's a trailer highlight right there, because we're all going to be in this what's happening together. You know what else is not going to happen now? 4th place. Ken, I think last episode you were talking about how we could still make 4th place.
Remember how I said I'm right on some things and wrong on another? Hey, I only read the numbers. The numbers, there's a calculation. I don't do any of that stuff. So, yeah, it is what it is. And, I haven't run this. The numbers are pretty much out the window. Is like the estimated numbers are, because there's not enough games really to validate one way or the other. So, as we said, when we're in, seventh at worst.
James on YouTube saying, yeah, no more Big Bang Theory. Yeah, but what an intro, though, James. What else got you more hyped to watch FC Cincinnati than a little Big Bang Theory before the match?
Here I was thinking he was talking about me and Ken's nerdy numbers.
That's funny. No, we were talking about...
yeah, I know.
No, I wish 4th place was still on the table, Ken. But it's just, I think it was kind of a lofty dream in the first place. But I did for a moment let myself dream. Everybody got that FC Cincinnati email, right? Where they said, we could have a home game. You don't do anything. You'll buy your tickets automatically. My bank account was like, no. But I was like, yes. Don't even want to know what those would have cost. All right. I got a special segment for you boys. We have a lot of draws on this schedule. We've got some losses on this schedule. More draws than losses, thankfully. But what points have FC Cincinnati left on the table that you now, knowing we just need a couple, can look back on the season and say, those are the points we dropped that I still remember that I want back right now?
I
Who
got
wants to
three.
go first?
I
Ken.
got 3 games specifically
All right,
in order, highest priority to lowest.
Just steal all the content for yourself.
I am Vancouver at home.
That's a good shout.
That was an easy win game, and we blew it with like 82 minute. Second one, Columbus Crew. I don't care about the call being bad, giving up a goal at the end that late should never even happen regardless. And the third one is Atlanta at home. Again, all those are late goals that we should have learned to close out. So those are the 3 games that I sit there and go, shame on us. Where we played it. Even if a ref played into those games, it was shame on us. We should have never been in those situations.
I'm going to second the Columbus game because that is a 6-point game. And knowing, even at the time, we were kind of right in the same spots in the table. So you can, looking at it now, we could have maybe helped eliminate them from the playoffs, which would have been awesome. Plus the drama of the referees being terrible added into that. I'm going to steal from several people on the chat, but say NYCFC at home. That's another one that got away from us that we really should have saw out.
All right, good shouts, chat, helping Jason out.
Well, Ken just went ham on these.
Yeah, right. I mean, obligatory shout out to the Columbus game. That has to be far and away number one, just because of the emotional pain and not only sure playoff implications, but that one just hurt. And then the only other one I'll throw out there is the Revolution game where Tommy McNamara scored a winner in the 80-something minute to take all 3 points. Sure would have loved to have 1 point from that game right about now.
Wish there wasn't so many to just popped in the top of our heads so fast. I was hoping to stump you guys, but you're like, no, rapid fire. Chat's got all kinds of games.
It's good that, we're sitting here talking about there are some losses mixed in there, but a lot of these are ties. Right. And, that's, again, a much better place than we've been. Next year, let's, try to see if they can turn some of those draws into wins. But turning a win into a draw is certainly certainly better than turning a draw into a loss.
That's true. If you turn a draw into a win, it's only 2 points, but those 2 points come in handy. Most recently for me, the memory is definitely like a Seattle, just because of how close it is and recent it is and immediate impact it makes. But some of these you also put into context. Like if you're a FC Cincinnati fan like me that's so used to rough seasons, you're like, what are you complaining about? What are you complaining about, guys? we're in the playoff race, guys.
I mean, it's like with any sports team, as the results change, the expectations change. We came into the season, I can't remember what I put in our preseason predictions. I think I put somewhere around 10th, 9th, 10th.
No one had him at 5th or 6th or wherever.
Yeah, but once we got rolling and we saw that, in my opinion, FC Cincinnati has the best attacking 3 in the league if they're all clicking at the same time. None of us knew that was going to be the case. None of us knew that Barrial was going to be such a revelation at wingback. And so as you get there, you're allowed to be greedy. You're totally allowed to be greedy. I mean, none of us, I think, expected the Bengals to make the Super Bowl last year. But as they got better and better, we're all like, yeah, let's keep this thing going. So, no matter what happens, I think everybody's going to be happy with the way the season went. But just knowing that what we know now and just knowing how talented this team is, I mean, we're a good MLS team. We're not great, but we're good enough to beat any other team on any given night. And I think it's okay to be selfish, and it's okay to want, to look back at the schedule and go, dang it, we really should have pulled that one out.
Yeah, flipping the script. If we flip it and say games we won that never in a million years did I think we would win, Philadelphia Union, and that's exactly where you say we can win any game any given night. I would have not believed you until we beat Philadelphia Union, and then
we tied them at Philadelphia too.
Yeah, 100%. That to me said, yeah, we can beat any team in the Eastern Conference if it's our night. Vasquez, Brenner, Barrial, Acosta, if they're all working together, if they're flowing, and I think that kind of, if you say Boston, give me the main problem with why we lost in Chicago, I am going to say we didn't work well together. Everybody went hero mode. And that was kind of my self-diagnosis in that match. I felt like in the first half, anyway, we had some guys that wanted to score, and no fault to them, but the passes just were not clean, crisp. We weren't setting up the perfect goals. We were just kind of shooting our shot. And in a match where a team game, you just sometimes need that team play. And Brenner needs to be serving Vasquez, and Vasquez needs to be serving Brenner, and Acosta needs to be worrying about getting in the right spot. So all this being said, who cares? Win versus DC. And we won't have to worry about it. Actually, Jose, I saw your question. He posted it on Facebook. Even if we take this season over the last 3, what do you guys think needs to change, fix for next year? If I answer that question, we won't have an off-season show to talk about it.
Exactly.
So we're going to put that on the back burner on purpose because it's too early. It's too early. We have a whole off-season coming, and we want to make sure we're definitely going to cover that question. Probably so much so that you're going to be like, I wish I never asked it. So it's coming. Don't worry. And we'll get there. We want to give a quick shout out, though, to all of the fans. Sponsors do great work for us, but really and honestly, fans cover the majority of the bills for this show. And so let's give a shout out to Ree Lee, John Davidson, Mike Hudson, Robert Stevens, Laurel Failer, Matthew Adamczyk, Riley Stephen Burke, James Denbrough, Tom Newhouse, Brian and Brad Weigel, Brian Gills, Dan Alberts, Will Kychek, Ian Rexroad, Augustus Caceres, Rupesh, Tom Beaversdorf, Bill Antonitis, Carl Fight, Jeremy Kyle Pohl, Christina Sharma. I think I just repeated some. But congratulations, you get 2 shout-outs. Jason, who is super average, John Haskell, Ryan Ernst, Mary Lou, West Anastasi, Rob Pierce, Clifford Adams, Thomas Steps, Pierce Johnson, Mike Parentis, Mr. and Mrs. Wiederhold, Rob Caselli, Kevin Day, Jamie Smed, Alex Carnegus, Mike Bowman, Patrick Lahani, David Tingler, Brett Sova, Chris Hubbard, Kevin Cooney, Joe Max, Jack Emery, Sarah Gorman, David Moore, Bob Ryan, Ryan Durkin, Bart Labita, Mark Neuenschweier, Robert Trippel, Joe Lohr, Bill Leopold, Maureen DeMore, and Jose, the man that wants to know what needs fixed. Shout
Boston,
out.
Did you mess up a name midway through that and just go, Joe?
I always do that. At least once. At least once. It's a running joke. Actually, somebody messaged me while Brian took over and said, I'm glad to know at least Brian botches my name too. So for the record, he did not get a perfect a name spiel. I just want that out there. It's not just me. It's a lot of names. You think I want to see somebody do it perfect. One of these days, I'm gonna have you guys do it.
I think you do a great job.
I've done some PA announcing in my day.
All right, man. Let's get into your final thoughts. There's been a lot since I've been on the show, so we're gonna open the doors up. I'll give you at least a month's worth of stuff to talk about. Jason, put you up first.
Oh man. Final thought, not MLS related, not FC Cincinnati related, but soccer related in general. I don't know if you all have been following the just horrible stories that are coming out of the NWSL.
Unfortunately.
And I'm trying to think of a polite way to say this, the sexual misconduct, I guess, that's going on, that's kind of running rampant within the league. and people in authority apparently, allegedly knowing about it and not really doing much. So today we learned a little bit more about Merritt Paulson. And then the news came out of Racing Louisville about stuff that was going on there. It's horrible to see. That goes without saying. And really, U.S. soccer and the NWSL as a whole, they need serious reform. From the outside, someone needs to investigate all this, and they need to get their house in order, because this is unacceptable in any situation. And I feel terrible for the people involved. When I lived in Salt Lake, I actually lived in the same apartment complex with some of the Utah Royals players. So it was not unusual to bump into like some of them at the dog park and stuff. And so, you get to know some of these people, and then you get to know what they're going through. And it breaks my heart, and something needs to be done. I hate to have that as my final thought, but really it's affecting U.S. soccer.
No, I think that's a fair statement. Every sport, every athlete should feel 100% safe going to work. Every person, period. So if it's plaguing in sport, it's not just a one team thing anymore. It's a several team thing, and I agree, it needs to be talked about more. All right, Ken, give us your final thoughts.
Yeah. We've been talking about the race for the playoff and us getting a position. What's just as tight as the race for the Eastern Conference playoff spots? The Growler Cup.
All right.
Yes, I am here to talk about the Growler Cup. We have 9 people. Well, we have more than 9 people involved in it. We have over 30-something people that play the Growler Cup. We have 9 people left that still have the opportunity to get into the money. We'll call it the prize zone. And James Denbo and Dave Tangler are the top 2, and one of those 2 is going to win this year's Growler Cup. If you all want to get involved next year, it's easy game to play. All it takes is be a Patreon supporter of Cincinnati Soccer Talk, and you'll just fill out a form and predict the score of each game, and you get so many points, and we pick the winner. So I do want to give one personal shout out to Rupesh Sharma. You're not in the money this year. Sorry, buddy. Sorry, Roop. But thanks to everybody who played. Next year, I hope to make it better.
Rigged. You know why? You know why I know it's rigged? Because somehow I'm at the bottom.
Boston, you haven't entered a score in like 6 weeks.
Boston has the same attitude towards Growler Cup that I do to my fantasy football team.
I was out of the country. What was I supposed to do? You're supposed to fill them in for me when I'm not around. All right, man. Nate, give us your final thoughts.
Well, to bring the conversation back down, I just wanted to echo a little bit what Jason was talking about with NWSL issues. There's a ton of awesome reporting about a horrible subject and a number of incidents. And I just think it's really worth making yourself aware of it. So either if that's reading any of the news stories about it, it was in the New York Times, it was great stuff in The Athletic. You can go to the source material. You can find there's a PDF out there from Sally Yates, who is the independent investigator. I think it's 300 pages, and it's really stomach churning and horrible. But it's really, I think, important to be aware of this, just because the NWSL is a really great product. I, like Boston alluded to, live in Washington, D.C., and have been lucky enough to go to a number of Spirit games this year, and they're awesome. Unfortunately, they won't be in the playoffs, but that playoff race is also starting. It'll be on Paramount Plus, I think, probably, and then maybe big CBS eventually. But if you haven't watched, watch. But make yourself aware of what's going on. I think it's really important just for the future of soccer in this country.
Thoughts and also for letting fans know what to check out. It's it's not just real for NWSL fans, but it's very real possibility that Cincinnati gets in on women's soccer, and it could very well be at NWSL. So this is a league we really need to get its ducks in a row before we join and become a part of this. And so not just that, though. That's kind of selfish. Safety, first and foremost, right, for everybody. Thanks, though, guys. You guys are great with your thoughts. I'm going to kind of transition a little bit to a different type of sucky situation. FCC2, awful. Oh, my goodness. What a bad season. And no one in the world wants to hear me talk about FC Cincinnati 2 right now. And I'm just here to say that bad season, it's actually okay. If you go back and you read some of the early stuff that was put out right when FCC2 was founded, you'll find a couple vague comments by Chris Albright and Noonan saying they were hired to put FCC back together. And we had kind of already agreed to form the MLS Next Pro, whatever you want to call it, team before we hired Albright and Noonan to fix this club. So what, as FCC fans, what did you want them to put their time, effort, and focus into coming into this year? Not the 2 team. You wanted them to turn the club around, and that's exactly what both of them did. And so they kind of admitted from the start that FCC2 would go on the back burner. They kind of put it in the hands of our former interim coach. And I think you're going to see some big changes this offseason. I don't know if you're going to see a coaching change, but it wouldn't shock me. And then FCC2 will probably get a makeover more with a Albright Noonan Philadelphia Union impression. That's my big prediction on the 2 team. I say this because our friends up north, the Columbus Crew, have decided that the 2 team is the best thing in the world because their 2 team has made the Eastern Conference, whatever the playoff version of a 2 league is. Guys, you didn't care. You didn't care until 2 weeks ago. And now all of a sudden you pretend like you care about your 2 team. It's cute. But just so you know, we didn't take this year seriously. And our coaches honestly just didn't have the bandwidth to even pay attention to it. So it's coming. If you are a fan of our 2 team, next year's the year you want to pay attention. This year was just bonus. All right. That's my final thought. I had to go off on that random tangent. No one wanted it, but it happened anyway. Thanks for tuning in to Cincinnati Soccer Talk and to listening to my sore throat try to manage through an hour of this show. Thanks to my co-hosts for relieving me of that full duty, and we appreciate you listening. We will be back next week, either with amazing news that we have made the playoffs or pure disappointment. And either way, you're going to want to listen to, because it's going to be just 4 guys excited out of their minds or all wishing they were dead. One of those things will happen. All right, so thanks for again. We will see you next week.